Discover 3 sinister and spine-chilling true horror tales from haunted summer nights revealed. Lisa could feel the heat wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Living in a rundown slice of Midwestern hell, she worked late shifts at the local gas station, her dreams fading into the damp twilight. With each gripping sigh, exhaustion wrapped her tighter, but it was the shadows lurking beyond the thin walls of her home that pricked at her mind, sending chills down her spine. A rough scrape echoed in the dead of night. She ignored it, until now. One night, just before bed, she blinked at the doorframe, dread creeping in like an unwelcome guest. Strange symbols danced there, twisted carvings her late grandmother had warned her about, supposed to ward off the spirits weaving through the darkened corners of their existence. How absurd, she muttered, brushing off the creeping sense of fear with a wry laugh. But Lisa's smile vanished when she found Ethan, her curious and imaginative 10-year-old, shaking and screaming after nights filled with shadowy figures lurking outside. Each dawn, she found herself wrestling with panic, a growing spiral that overwhelmed her. Initially, she dismissed the oddities and concerns about her deteriorating home. But as the whispers from nosy neighbors coiled around her like a thick fog, she felt the night darken. Children don't scream for nothing. And amidst her exhaustion and anxiety, every mention of sorrow tied to their new home twisted a knife in her gut. There were tales of losses, of unhappiness that twisted beneath the summer heat. And then there was Mr. Jenkins, their seemingly good-natured neighbor. The darkness that clouded his eyes felt signal enough. Rumors of his obsession with local folklore sent shudders up her spine. Something about him felt off. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As shadows stretched across the walls, Lisa fought despair. She wandered through her house, frigid drafts kissing her skin like icy fingers. It was stifling, the heat pressing down, yet the whispers came colder. The symbols now faintly glowing under the moonlight seemed to breathe their own ominous presence. Those once dismissed warning signs transformed into dark omens, warning her that her crumbling sanctuary might be more a prison than a refuge. Each passing night molded terror into reality as she delved deeper into the whispers surrounding her home and its previous occupants. Each crack in the walls seemed to pulse with a history she never wanted to inherit. Anxiety bubbled within her as she felt the lurking danger draw closer. The last straw was a chilling call from Ethan, his voice not his own, echoing like a haunting melody in her mind. Gasping, she found herself alone, staring into the crumbling corners of her empty place, fear sweeping over her like an avalanche. The dark that swelled in her home turned palpable. With shadows stretching toward her, she yearned for a sliver of hope amidst the chaos. But the knock at the door shattered her brief moment of solace, a soft, unnerving knock. One that didn't belong to anyone she knew. Instinct screamed for her to flee, to hide, but curiosity tied her to that hanging moment, teetering on the edge of unimaginable horror. What awaited her on the other side? The knock came again, more insistent this time, a rhythmic thud that sent shockwaves through her frail nerves. Lisa's heart raced, thunderous in the thick silence of the night. Another knock echoed, deep and unsettling, as though something ancient had come to demand entry into her world. "Mom?" Ethan's voice broke through the tension. She turned, startled, only to find him standing at the end of the dark hall. His small figure was illuminated by the flickering light of the overhanging lamp, casting an eerie glow. His eyes widened, fear etched on his pale face. "Stay back, Ethan," she whispered, urgently beckoning him away from the door. The instincts of a parent surged in her. Protectiveness fought against the panic that clawed at her chest. She tightened her grip on her phone, the only weapon she felt she had. Another knock reverberated, this time accompanied by a whispered string of words just beyond the door. The voice was raspy, distorted and chilling, a sound that didn't belong to any living being. It was like rusted metal scraping against stone, mingling with murmurs that twisted through the air, laced with threats. "Mom, who is it?" Ethan's voice trembled, and worry laced through her. She didn't have an answer. She could barely breathe. Her lungs felt constricted as the darkness inched closer, curling around her like a snake. Just stay there," she said, forcing her feet to move toward the door, feeling as if an unseen force pulled her. Each step turned into a battle against her own instincts. Hesitation flooded her mind. What if it was a figment, a cruel trick of her mind? But what if it wasn't? "Let me in," the voice crooned, wrapping around her, thick and suffocating. Just behind the door, something stirred, shadows swirling like a mist. It was drawing her closer, the fear clenching her gut as she reached for the doorknob. A crack of thunder boomed outside, shaking the house to its core. The light flickered, threatening to extinguish as the air grew thick with tension. But Lisa's hand hesitated above the knob, trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Open the door. I need to come in." The voice rose in urgency, morphing into a guttural growl that sliced through the quiet. "No!" Lisa screamed, yanking her hand away and stumbling backward. Her heart raced, pounding out a frantic rhythm as she turned to Ethan. "What should we do?" Ethan glanced toward the door, his wide eyes shimmering with confusion. "Is it Mr. Jenkins?" His innocent question cut deep, but Lisa's mind was still reeling. Could easily be him. The thought sent cold dread pooling in her stomach. Then the voice shifted again, morphing into yet another familiar sound, the soft voice of her late grandmother, comforting and sorrowful. "Lisa, let me in, I'm here for you. I need you, Ethan. Hide," she shouted, even as the door quivered beneath another powerful knock. Panic surged, and she sprinted toward her son, grabbing his arm. "What if it's true?" he whispered, fear raising the hair on the back of her neck. "What if she needs you? You don't understand." Lisa pulled Ethan close, desperation mingling with rage and fear. You just can't." The knocking stopped, leaving an unsettling silence hanging heavy in the air. The world outside seemed still, as if time had paused, waiting for her to make a choice. Would she confront the horrors beckoning from beyond, or would she retreat into the depths of her own fears? The suffocating silence shattered as a soft, sinister giggle echoed from the other side, cutting through her resolve. "Open the door, Lisa, we're waiting," it called. And as the chilling promise enveloped them, Lisa realized the night was far from over. Something dark and ancient was stirring, ready to draw them into its twisted game. What horrid truth awaited her beyond the door? A cold shiver raced down Lisa's spine as she pressed her back against the wall, each heartbeat pounding in her ears like a warning drum. The giggle echoed again, more joyous now. It was wrong, everything about it was wrong. She felt like a marionette, strings severed, as sheer terror began to paralyze her. "Mom, what is happening?" Ethan's desperation was bright and raw, slicing through the chaos in her mind, pulling her back to him. "Just stay quiet," she breathed, panic fuming in her throat. What if it was all a trick to lure them out? The lights flickered again, casting shadows that danced with a life of their own. The previously solid door now seemed an ominous portal, a thin veneer between them and something loathsome. She edged closer, her breath hitching. Maybe someone was genuinely in trouble. Maybe Mr. Jenkins did need her help. But no, deep down she knew it was something much worse. Just as that thought solidified, the whispers began again, louder, more frantic. "Let me in, it's cold out here, don't you want to help?" Ethan clutched her waist, his small frame trembling. "Mom, please, Ethan, remember your dad told us about the night horrors?" she whispered, squeezing his hand. "They feed on fear. The more we panic, the stronger they get." His eyes searched hers, as if trying to find an anchor in the storm. "But what if it's someone who needs us? Sometimes those who need us only want to hurt us." Then, with a sudden rush, The voice changed yet again, becoming shrill and tormented. "Lisa, please. I'm trapped, help me." It was a sound that clawed at her heart, twisting memories, stitching together pain she thought buried. "Mom!" Ethan whimpered, and Lisa felt the pressure of the moment weighing down on her like an anvil. The tense silence snapped, replaced by an almost gleeful howl that echoed from the door, reverberating in her bones. "So little time. So many games. Will you play? Will you let us in?" She turned sharply at Ethan, whose wide eyes mirrored her own horror. "We have to go now." But as she turned toward the hallway, the house shifted beneath her, shadows morphing into tendrils that stretched across the floor, blocking any escape. The walls around them pulsed with an unseen energy, slithering and writhing like they were alive. "Mom!" Ethan's voice cracked, and the world blurred around her. "Hold on," she shouted, but as she pulled him closer, the mockery from the door grew louder, enveloping them in a cacophony of horrid laughter. "Open up! Open the door!" Every heartbeat felt like an eternity. Each second weighted with dread. She had to make a choice to fight or to flee. Suddenly an idea struck her. She had read stories about banishing spirits if they were spirits. But were they? "Ethan, count to 3. On 3 we run to the back door. Can you do that?" "Yes." The determination in his voice surprised her, filling her with a glimmer of hope. "Okay. 1, 2. With every number, she felt the walls squeeze tighter. The whispers grew almost deafening. "You can't escape, you're ours." 3. They bolted. As they ran, the shadows lashed out, a clamoring hand reaching for them, brushing against her ankle. She stumbled. Ethan gasped, and she whipped around, gathering courage. Get to the door. But the view to the back seemed endless, stretching far away. Bursting through the kitchen, the air turned frigid, dimmed like a setting sun extinguished. The laughter swirling behind them had turned to wails, a cacophony drowning out reason. "You'll never leave. You belong to us." Just as they reached the back door, Lisa fumbled with the handle, fear gripping her fingers. It was stuck. "Mom! Hurry!" Ethan's voice broke through her fog of terror. She threw her weight against it, panic surging within. In a final lunge, the door gave way, and they were thrust into a world filled with chaotic sounds, the night air biting at their skin. But outside, the landscape was a twisted reflection of their own yard, dark and unsettling. The familiar now terrifying. They stood at the threshold, suspended between the horror they fled and the disconcerting. Unknown ahead. "Where do we go now?" Ethan whispered, realization sweeping over him. Then, something darted in the darkness, the outline of a figure. "Help me, please." Lisa's heart sank as they found themselves at the mercy of the looming shadows, whispers rising again. Did they truly escape? Or had they only stepped into something much worse? What awaited them in this new realm? The figure loomed closer, shrouded in the distance. But as it neared, its true form twisted the very air around them. The pale face of a girl, her eyes glimmering like shards of ice, stared back at them. "You have to help me. I can guide you." Her voice curled around them like smoke. Ethan squeezed Lisa's hand tighter, his small fingers trembling. "Mom, I don't like this." Panic clawed at Lisa's chest. Could they trust her? "What happened to you?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I can't talk here. It's not safe." The girl stepped closer, her silhouette slicing through the thickening darkness. "Follow me." Before she could react, the girl spun on her heel and dashed into the shadows, beckoning them. Lisa glanced down at Ethan, his frightened face set with determination. "We have to find a way to safety," she whispered. They took a cautious step forward, but the moment they broke the stillness of their escape, whispers swelled like a tide from the ground. "You're foolish. You don't know what waits for you." Lisa shook her head, trying to clear her mind. "No, we're not afraid. We will find a way back." The girl paused and looked over her shoulder, her expression a mix of urgency and horror. "You must hurry, or they will take you." With a heavy heart, Lisa found herself compelled to follow, dragging Ethan along as they chased this flicker of hope. They sprinted, the echoes of their hurried footsteps swallowed by the night's weight. Dark trees surrounded them, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky, looming as if the very landscape were alive. Watching, waiting. Suddenly, the air thickened, pressing down on her like a blanket. Lisa felt the shadows grow hungry, creeping closer with every step. "What do you mean they will take you?" she yelled, grasping for answers as fear bubbled in her throat. "The ones in the house," the girl panted, her voice low, almost drowned out. "They want to play games with you. They want to steal your light." Lisa's heart dropped at the realization. The laughter from the house had been more than just jest. It was a sinister proclamation of their intent. It was a hunt and they were the prey. "What games?" Ethan whispered, glancing around, his wide eyes pleading. "Dark games," the girl replied, urgency replacing her earlier calm. "You must trust me. We can escape if you do what I say." Lisa felt the pull of desperation. A choice lay ahead. "What do we have to do?" She shivered as the wind howled. "We need to find the tree. The one that twists and bends like an old woman. There lies a portal. It's your only hope." As they raced forward, the laughter from behind echoed louder, more frantic. The forest felt like it was closing in on them, shadows pooling under their feet as tendrils reached out, grazing against Lisa's ankle. "Mom, look!" Ethan screamed, pointing ahead. A tree emerged from the darkness, distorted and writhing, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. They dashed toward it, but the ground trembled beneath them. With every stride, the tormented wails intensified, swallowing their footsteps, drowning out their cries. Not much time left. "They're coming." As they reached the tree, the air crackled with an energy so potent it raised the hairs on their arms. Lisa grasped Ethan's hand, frantic. "What now?" "Touch the trunk. It will reveal." Before the words could take shape, white-hot pain surged through her shoulder as unseen hands yanked her backward. "No!" she screamed, holding on tight to Ethan, who screamed her name as the shadows clawed at her. "Help me!" Lisa's voice pierced the night, a frenzy of desperate panic. The tree shimmered, twisting, as though it breathed. Would it be a portal or a trap? "Mom! You have to." Ethan's voice faded as the shadows closed in around them, the laughter now melding into the frantic beating of her heart. With everything in her, she reached for the tree. The moment her fingers brushed the bark, reality shuddered. But what would joining the darkness mean for them? Would the portal be salvation, or their final act? As Lisa's fingers touched the trunk, the world around them flickered, the shadows distorting reality like a warped reflection. She felt the energy pulse beneath her skin, thumping in rhythm with her racing heart. Suddenly, a blinding light shot from the tree, illuminating the forest for an instant. A face surfaced amidst the brightness, a gaunt, twisted visage with hollow eyes piercing through her soul. "Choose," it whispered, echoing through the air like a mournful song. "Choose what?" Lisa gasped, fear curling tight in her chest. The tree started to pulse faster, darkness shrinking back momentarily as if held at bay by her very presence. Ethan's grip slackened, and Lisa turned just in time to see his face shift from panic to an eerie sense of calm. "Mom, maybe we should." His words hung in the air, almost hypnotic. "No, we don't know what that is," she cried, pulling him closer, but the shadows danced, tugging insistently. They laughed, a cacophony of chilling mirth that filled her with dread. Then the girl stepped forward, urgency painted on her face. "You can't let them touch you. You must stay together." Behind them, the laughter grew, threads of icy fingers reaching out to caress Ethan's face. "Let him go. Give him to us," they chanted, their disembodied voices wrapping around them like chains. "No," Lisa shouted, yanking Ethan away as he swayed slightly, entranced by their calls. She took another breath, pushing against the growing weight of despair that threatened to anchor them in place. Sparking determination ignited within her. "We need to step through the tree, Ethan. We need to go now." She backed up, keeping her focus on the tree's pulsating trunk, its patterns morphing like winding paths leading to an unknown destination. "Mom, I don't want to leave," Ethan cried, glancing back at the shifting shadows, his eyes wide with fear. A flash of icy fingers brushed against Lisa's leg, and an overwhelming wave of fear surged through her. We can't stay. They'll take us if we don't hurry. She felt her voice slip into a raw whisper, adrenaline cranking her heart into a frenzied rhythm. The girl tugged at Ethan, compelling him forward while Lisa fought off the writhing darkness threatening to engulf them. Trust her, Ethan. Trust me. We have to stay united. Just then, the shadows thickened into a cohesive mass, swirling with diabolical intent. The laughter transformed into a guttural growl, a roar of want as it surged forward. Lisa dug deeper, adrenaline igniting her movements. On 3, we dive in. 1, 2, with a roar, the shadows lunged. 3, they dove into the tree together. For a heartbeat, it felt like falling through a whirlpool sucking her downward. The air swirling around them, voices screaming from every direction until silence swallowed them whole. They landed unceremoniously on cold, hard ground. Lisa quickly pushed herself up and scanned their surroundings. Gone was the forest, replaced by a vast, desolate expanse. Dim lights flickered in the distance, their rhythm almost beckoning, taunting them. Where are we? Ethan asked breathlessly, the tremor in his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. I don't know, Lisa said, fear tightening its grip around her. The ground they stood on felt wrong, uneven, almost alive, breathing in sync with the dark sky above. When she looked back, the tree was gone, replaced by an eerie void. A low hum reverberated above them. What do we do now? Ethan whispered, his confusion morphing into fear. Dread coiled around Lisa's heart, and dread crept back in. The realization dawned heavily upon her. Whatever this place was, it was bound to the laughter they had escaped. We need to move. We can't stay here. A flash of movement caught her eye, figures darting in the distance. Shadows flitting like nightmares come to life. Her blood ran cold. They weren't safe yet. Run, she yelled, grabbing Ethan's hand. But where would they go? With barely a step into the dark unknown, the whispering voices returned. You've come to play. Welcome to our game. Lisa's heart slammed against her ribs as she ran faster. The ground shaking beneath her feet and dread curling at the edges of her mind. What had they walked into? More questions rose like a flood, threatening to drown them both. And more sinister laughter echoed all around, sending shivers crawling down her spine. Ethan stumbled behind her, the damp earth sucking at his shoes, holding him back like hands from the grave. Shadows flickered and twisted, chasing them as they sprinted across the alien terrain. Each stuttered breath felt heavy with dread. A dark weight pressed down on them, pulling them into the void that seemed eager to swallow their cries. Mom, please, Ethan gasped, fear lacing every word. What if they find us? His brow was slick with sweat, eyes wide and frantic, scanning the dark surroundings as if they would suddenly offer them safety. But there was no comfort here, only the pulsing darkness that thrummed with a grotesque energy. We have to keep moving, Lisa urged, her voice sharp and commanding despite the torrent of fear that threatened to drown her. She darted toward the flickering lights in the distance, but as they drew closer, the lights shifted like a cruel mirage. They danced and pulled away from her, teasing, leading them into deeper shadows. Catching glimpses of those fleeting figures, the hairs on the back of her neck bristled. They were shaped like children, but their movements were unnatural, jerking and twitching, as if they were marionettes pulled by invisible strings. Laughter trickled through the air, a sound that twisted her stomach into knots. Keep your eyes on me, she shouted back to Ethan as her heart raced. The putrid air weighed heavily, thick and clammy, coating her throat. She gasped, and the shadows seemed to close in tighter. A jagged rock jutted out of the ground, and Lisa barely avoided it as she veered away. Come on, keep up, she yelled. But when she looked back, Ethan had slowed again, staring at the shadows in morbid fascination. No, Ethan, Lisa screeched, pain ripping through her chest. The boy stood transfixed, caught in the hypnotic call from the gathering darkness. Ethan. The name echoed like a desperate prayer. She raced back, grabbing his arm just as icy fingers brushed against his cheek. From behind the shadows, The haunted whispers coalesced, wrapping around his thoughts like chains. "Join us," they beckoned, voices dripping with sinister sweetness. Lisa yanked Ethan back just in time. "We're not doing this. You're not going anywhere." She felt his body tremble, the warmth of his skin beneath her fingers oddly comforting even as panic gripped her heart. But it wasn't enough. The haze began to thicken, and icy despair crawled up from her feet, gnawing at her resolve. She blinked away moisture, half believing that if she just squeezed her eyes tight enough, this nightmare would evaporate with the morning sun. "Run," she wailed, yanking him this way and that, forcing him to break free from the shadow's pull. The laughter crescendoed like a million whispers, each more sinister than the last. They had to escape, but escape to where? Suddenly, the shivering lights burst together into a chaotic orb, a swirling mass of agony and joy, beckoning, threatening to draw them in. "Give in, give in," the shadows called out. Lisa felt as if her sanity was hanging by a thread. "Stay with me, Ethan." Panic surged as the shadows danced hungrily around them, elongating, trying to ensnare them in their darkened grasp. Then, without warning, the ground bucked beneath them. She let out a cry as she stumbled and fell, pulling Ethan down with her as the earth trembled violently. Was it alive? They landed hard, and when Lisa looked up, darkness no longer surrounded them. Instead, they were in a narrow corridor. The walls were alive with creeping shadows, dripping like ink, swirling and melding to form grotesque faces. "What is this place?" Ethan whispered, terror etched on his face as he scrambled to stand, shaking as if the shadows might reawaken. "I don't know, but we need to find a way out." Just then, the whispers intensified, and laughter echoed from the walls, enveloping them in a chilling embrace. "You can't escape the game, you are the game." A pulse of dread surged through Lisa. They were trapped. The realization hit her like a cold wave. And what if there was no way out? With hearts beating frantically, they pressed on, unsure of what awaited them around the next corner. But they had to move. And in that moment, too close for comfort, a flickering light flickered into view at the end of the corridor. Hope and fear battled within Lisa as they drew near. Was it salvation or another trap? The shadows whispered wild and excited. "You'll never leave us." What lay ahead was unknown, but something dark was waiting and it wanted to play. Ethan's fingers felt cold in Lisa's grip, each step echoing dread as they moved deeper into the corridor. The flickering light ahead cast long, wavering shadows against the walls, creating a dance of darkness that made her breath hitch. It felt alive, pulsating, as if the very marrow of the ground throbbed in anticipation. "Keep close," she whispered, forcing her voice steady. But there was a tremor in her throat, a shaking fear coursing through her. What if the light was just a lure, a trap designed to ensnare the weak? As they inched forward, the laughter from the walls grew louder, a mocking echo that twisted her stomach into knots. "You can't escape the game," it sang, intertwining with the flickering light in a sick melody that rattled in her bones. "Mom," Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't like this place." His eyes darted nervously, searching for something, anything, that could make sense of this grotesque reality. "Neither do I," she replied, forcing herself to focus, to not show him her fear. That was crucial. She needed to stay his anchor, even as darkness seeped into her very soul. They reached the light, now burning bright enough to illuminate the corridor. When they emerged, she gasped. They stood before a door, ancient and twisted, vines creeping up its surface like fingers. Etched on it were symbols that seemed to shift and morph, almost writhing in the light. The air hummed with a palpable tension, a fearsome energy that whispered that whatever lay beyond was not meant for human eyes. "What do we do?" Ethan's voice quivered. The answer lingered between them, heavy and unwelcome. They had no choice. Summoning every ounce of courage, Lisa reached for the handle, feeling the cold metal bite into her palm. Just as she turned it, an agonizing scream erupted from the walls, piercing through their minds like 1,000 needles. "Stop!" Ethan shrieked, terror flooding his face. Lisa froze. For a second, it felt as if the walls were closing in, absorbing their very breath. Her heart hammered in her chest. But still, the handle turned, and with a creak that echoed like laughter in the night, the door swung open. A gust of fetid air burst forth, wrapping around them with rancid whispers. "Join us forever." Lisa collapsed backward, pulling Ethan down with her. A shadow, darker than the void, slithered from the room, reaching with 1,000 groping hands. It felt like a living mass, hungry and warped, demanding. "No!" Lisa screamed, scrambling to her feet. "We can't let it take us." They began to retreat, but the shadows flared, morphing and shifting, making the path behind them pulse with blinding terror. "Mom!" Ethan shouted, his eyes wide. "You can't run from darkness. It knows you." The hallway twisted, the ground became slippery underfoot, and Lisa felt her heart plummet as she realized it was true. The darkness was alive, feeding on their fears, pulling at the threads of their sanity. She knew deep down they had entered a place out of time, a realm that toyed with them, testing their limits and mocking their will to survive. And then, a sudden realization washed over her colder than the shadows surrounding them. The air shifted around them, thickening, wrapping them in its embrace like a shroud. "We can't face this alone," Ethan muttered. "What if we're part of it now?" As dread rooted deeper, the corridor expanded, closing them in, walls shifting under dark energy. Whispers curled around them. "Welcome to the game." You are the game. In that moment, as despair took hold, Lisa heard something, a heartbeat. Thundering, relentless, echoing in time with her own. They needed to find it, to understand its rhythm, but shadows danced, pulling her focus away. "Mom!" Ethan cried again, but the sound echoed strangely, becoming distorted in the thickening air. The light behind them winked out in an instant, leaving nothing but a hollow darkness around them and that heartbeat, now impossibly loud. It was clear they had to choose between delving deeper into the abyss or fighting against unspeakable horror. What lay beyond the next choice? Was it their salvation, or would it seal their fate forever? The pounding in Lisa's chest matched the relentless heartbeat, throbbing in her ears. Shadows twisted, pulling and stretching like fingers that sought to grasp them, holding them against the ice-cold walls. "Ethan," she gasped, looking down at her son, whose face was pale under the dim light. "We need to find a way out. We can't stay here." "But where do we go?" He trembled, his small hands gripping hers as tight as he could manage. The laughter echoed again, sending shivers cascading down her spine, ripping through the fragile silence as it grew into a cacophony. "You always said darkness can be fought," he whimpered. "We have to move," she urged, her desperation lacing her voice. As they stumbled back the way they came, the shadows thickened, wrapping around their legs, slowing their progress. With each step, the laughter twisted into a mocking chorus. "Stay, stay, join us, shut up," Lisa shouted into the suffocating dark, as if her words could slice through the nightmare surrounding them. But the shadows only surged, bubbling with impatience, eager to swallow them whole. Lisa felt a sudden heat on her back. The door they had just fled stood wide open, encouraging them to return, beckoning them to surrender. "Mom, it wants us." Ethan's voice cracked, his eyes wide and wild. "It knows our fears. It's playing with us. Walk, Ethan," she shouted, pushing forward, using her body as a shield against the gnashing darkness trying to consume them. They stumbled into the flickering light that had drawn them to the door in the first place. It was brighter, more erratic now, like a frantic heartbeat of its own. Suddenly, a low whisper began to weave through the air. "Don't you want to play?" The phrase slithered into her mind like a snake, coiling around her thoughts. Lisa shook her head violently, trying to dispel the words, but they slipped in like shadows, clouding her judgment. "We could be together forever, Mom," Ethan screamed, his voice breaking even further. She grabbed his shoulders, looking him dead in the eye, forcing her voice to be steady. "We need to remember who we are. They want us to forget. We fight no matter what." Nodding, Ethan clasped his hands tightly around hers, his innocence still flickering like a candle against the winds of despair. They turned, focusing on the distant glow of what seemed to be sunlight, trapped somewhere down the corridor. But the laughter grew louder, vibrating through the air as though the walls themselves were inhaling deeply to roar back at them. Then, without warning, the heartbeat crescendoed into a fever pitch. The very ground beneath their feet trembled, causing Lisa to stumble. Ethan screamed again, the echoes mingling with the heartbeat, scrambling and distorting everything into an unbearable rhythm. "Mom, what is happening?" The ground erupted, a fissure splitting wide, dragging shadows like currents toward the abyss that gaped before them. Lisa gasped. No, no. They were on the edge, teetering dangerously. Instinct kicked in and she snatched Ethan, pulling him back just as the darkness threatened to grab him. Their survival felt like a desperate dash against fate. They had to run, to leap beyond the fracture that beckoned them, to cling to life before it swallowed them whole. "Quick! We need to jump," Lisa urged, preparing for the leap. But what lay ahead was no salvation, just more darkness. As they edged toward the illusion of light, the world around them contorted, changing, blending into a twisted reflection of despair. What if their only escape was already a deeper trap waiting to claim them? "What if we don't make it?" Ethan's whisper was full of dread. "Then we fight," Lisa said. With their number called, they leaped together, their feet catching air as the light flashed sickly bright around them. Would they transcend the abyss or fall deeper into its hungry embrace? As they soared, the shadows united into a single wailing scream that pierced through the void, promising them a game that never ended. They landed hard, the impact jarring their bones as they tumbled into a cold, concrete floor. Dust choked Lisa's lungs, and she instinctively shielded Ethan, rolling him beneath her. Panic clawed at her throat as she tried to regain her bearings. The dim light flickered above them, barely illuminating the space around them. Whispers slithered through the air, sharp as knives, circling around them like ravenous vultures. Where are we?" Ethan's voice trembled, his small palm finding its way to hers again, seeking comfort. Lisa squinted into the shadows, embracing the corners of the room. Everything felt off, as though the very air around them was charged with unspeakable dread. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving," she muttered, forcing a resolve she didn't feel. Their eyes adjusted, and a series of mechanical devices loomed like sentinels. Some were rusted, others flickering with a feeble glow. Lisa felt a surge of dread, her heartbeat echoing as loudly as the whispers creeping back. It was as if the machinery itself had a pulse, throbbing in sync with the darkness. "Mom!" Ethan tugged hard on her shirt. "What is that?" He pointed toward a half-open doorway, bathed in a sliver of light that danced like a flame taunting a moth. Instinctively, they moved toward it, their feet slipping on the slick floor. Every cautious step sent a tremor through the floor, and whispers grew louder, overlapping sounds of laughter and cries coiling through the air. Join us," they laughed, haunting and relentless, pulling at their sanity as they reached the door. Lisa glanced back. The shadows seemed to twist, writhing closer, darkness creeping like a living thing, eager to snatch them back into the void. "Hurry!" she hissed, shoving Ethan ahead, the light enticing them with false promises of safety. They stumbled through the threshold, and a new smell assaulted them, sweat and iron, like blood, the very scent of fear. The room was a stark contrast to the first. Walls lined with shelves stacked high with jars that glowed with an unnatural light. Inside each jar swirled foggy shapes, vague faces, and the echo of unheard screams trapped forever, suspended in amber liquid. Ethan's face blanched. "Mom, what are those?" "Don't look," she commanded, her heart racing. The sight made her stomach churn, but deep inside, she knew they needed to reach the other side of the room, where a flickering light seemed to promise hope and escape. The air grew colder as they stepped further inside, and a bone-chilling laugh erupted, echoing off the walls. A figure began to materialize from the depths of the shadows, an inky silhouette that expanded into the form of a person, all sharp angles and elongated limbs that seemed to stretch and shudder. "Stay here with me," it beckoned, its voice like honey mixed with venom, oozing through the air. "You'd be happier, no?" Lisa spat, clutching Ethan's hand tightly. "We want to stay." We'd rather fight. The figure shrieked, a sound so raw and twisted that it threatened to tear at Lisa's sanity. The jars rattled violently, and something inside began to stir, their trapped faces morphing into expressions of anguish and torment. "Don't let them in, Mom!" Ethan screamed, his small body shaking against hers. "Just keep moving." Her words propelled them forward through the room, a shocking burst of adrenaline fueling their flight. The figure lunged, stretching its ghastly limbs toward them, darkness spilling from its fingertips like a storm. Suddenly, the floor beneath them buckled, a crack forming as shadows spilled forward like a tidal wave. Lisa stumbled, feeling the grip on Ethan's hand falter. "Mom!" Fear seized at her heart. She had to save her son. As they both veered toward the flickering light ahead, the walls crumbled around them, voices screaming, shadows howling, testing the very fabric of their reality. Just a little further. But the closer they got, the more Lisa felt the coldness seep into her bones, the light dimming and flickering as if it too was afraid of the darkness closing in. Would they escape this never-ending torment, or had they just run deeper into its wicked embrace? An unholy laughter rose, consuming the air around them, a dreadful hint of what was to come, and then the ground vanished, leaving nothing but the echoes of despair behind. The world around Lisa and Ethan dissolved into nothingness, replaced by a blinding flash. Shadows shrieked and dissolved into the light, the cacophony of despair silenced in an instant. Lisa shielded Ethan as they fell, plummeting back into chaos. But something felt different this time. The air was lighter, the darkness receding. They landed gently on soft grass under an open sky, the sun saturating everything in warmth. Lisa blinked against the brightness and sat up, glancing around in disbelief. They were back in their backyard, the familiar sight of their rundown home standing mockingly before them. She could almost hear the joyful laughter of children playing in the nearby streets. But the muggy summer air felt different now, a serene stillness veiling a lingering terror. "Mom, is it really over?" Ethan asked, his eyes wide, searching her face for assurance. Lisa took a deep breath, trying to steady the frantic swirls of emotion quaking within her. I think we're safe," she replied, her voice trembling. They were away from the shadows, away from those monstrous figures. But the fear still gnawed at her. Yet, something stirred within. The constant tug of dread faded, replaced by fleeting whispers of relief. She looked at Ethan, who seemed so small and fragile against the radiance around them. "We should go inside," she urged, pulling his hand. Fear had a way of lingering, and they needed to regroup, to dissolve the memories of terror that still clouded their minds as they stepped inside. The air crackled with an unfamiliar warmth, the shadows seemed lighter, softer. Gone were the oppressive whispers, replaced instead with the distant sounds of the world outside, a lullaby of life. They sat in the dim living room, the walls now an embrace rather than a cage. "I was so scared, Mom," Ethan admitted, a single tear rolling down his cheek. Lisa pulled him close, wrapping her arms protectively around him. "I know, buddy. Me too," she murmured, guilt squeezing her heart. How did she let it get that far? "But we're together. That's what matters." Ethan nodded, a brave little soldier forced to carry the weight of memories that clung to them like stubborn cobwebs. Together they would face whatever darkness remained. And maybe, just maybe, they could create a new light, turning the horrors of those nights into strength for the future. Days turned into weeks, and with each sunrise, Lisa could feel the memories dulling. The laughter returned, filling the once empty spaces of their haunted home. Ethan's smile bloomed brighter, shadows chased from their lives. They made the old house their own, painting walls bright colors, inviting joy where there had once been only fear. But nights whispered still. When shadows stretched, Lisa would hold Ethan close, their breaths mingling with the soft sounds of the world outside. She often glanced at the door, half expecting a knock that would never come, a reminder of the night terrors that had threatened their bond. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" Ethan would ask sometimes, eyes glinting with concern. "No," she'd say firmly. "We confronted them together. They can't take us if we don't let them." As the seasons changed, the nights grew less daunting. Nights of laughter filled with ghost stories shifted into dreams of hope and courage. It was then they decided to plant a tree right outside, a symbol of resilience against the darkness. "This tree will be our beacon," Lisa declared, digging the hole for the roots. A reminder that even the darkest times can lead to new growth. Ethan watched eagerly as they nurtured it together. As it grew sturdy against the seasons, so did their bond, healed through love and light. One evening, upon returning home, Lisa paused before the door. She opened it slowly, warmth spilling out into the cool night. "We need to remember what we faced," she said firmly, looking at her son. "But we also need to embrace the light we've created." Ethan nodded solemnly, a fierce determination gleaming in his innocent eyes. Life would always carry remnants of their past, but they had found strength. Amid the shadows, hand in hand, they stepped over the threshold, ready to embrace whatever joys lay ahead together, always together. The sun dipped down, painting the sky in hues of warm gold, as the night welcomed them back home. Peace settled in, the echoes of their fear drowned by melodious laughter that rang out, the ghosts quite literally left behind. Now you need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show us your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second, instant share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know the importance of supporting our journey through storytelling.